looks fantastic, it sounds fantastic, and I dare say, I think it's easy as pie. Wonderful, wonderful technique to have.
Scales are the backbone of piano playing, whether you're just starting out or mastering the craft. But let's be real, it's easy to forget why we spend so much time practicing them.
The word scales itself has a somewhat dirty connotation, and when I mention it to students, they invariably cringe a bit, and yet they are, of course, rather important.
Not to worry. Today, the incredible concert pianist Sara Davis Buechner is here to help us remember why we work on scales in the first place. She is going to take us on a tour of some of the most iconic scale moments in piano repertoire.
Beethoven, Franz Liszt, Camille Saint-Saëns and Grieg, Chopin.
And she's going to offer some helpful ideas along the way for how to execute these passages with flair and ease.
Call it cheating if you will, I call it intelligent facilitation.
All of the material you'll see today comes straight from Sara's new course on Tonebase Premium,
the Tonebase School of Virtuosity,
where she offers a full 7-part course on all aspects of advanced piano technique.
So I feel that students don't really quite understand what technique is, and even some advanced professionals very often have a rather blasé view of what technique is.
This video is part of a full lesson on pretty much every possible way to practice scales, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. Other lessons include how to work on repeated notes, trills, hand extensions, and much, much more.
Technique is like money, and the more of it that you have, the finer you feel and the more things you're able to accomplish. However, showing it off merely for its own sake is extremely bad form.
If you're ready to take your piano playing to the next level, be sure to check out Tonebase Premium by clicking the link in the description below and getting started with a 14-day free trial. Also, to find more tips on scales that you can use right now, be sure to check out our video from a few months ago, which has tons of exercises to get you started. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out so much in bringing you insightful and interesting content from legends like Sara and many others. Now, let's get to it.
Obviously, it's not difficult to find scales in the repertoire that need attention when you're learning various pieces. But let's give kind of a critical eye to some of these passages so we see exactly what's involved. Obviously, this is kind of a virtuoso exercise in knowledge of E-flat major, and Beethoven has written it out in a certain rhythmic pattern, which looks like it should be. And of course, he doesn't mean for it to be played exactly in that particular way. So you have to be comfortable enough with E-flat major to do these swirls around it, which don't go to the end of the scale. G, B flat, E flat, G, B flat. Of course, a lot of scales don't have so much accent and strength to them. A good example here is from Chopin's second impromptu in F sharp major. The real emphasis here is not on the right hand doing the scales, but the left hand. So you have to have great fluency and ease of motion in doing these things. And with great tonal emphasis that the scale should never sound mechanical. And here's where it becomes important, if we're talking about practicing scales as a daily activity, that you do not automatically render such things in a mechanical way, but rather think about it musically, or with some idea of articulation. I learned this also the hard way. I've learned an awful lot of things in life the hard way from the great pianist Rudolf Virkushny. In my very, very first lesson with the man, I remember playing the Waldstein Sonata at a tempo that rivaled that of an SST jet or something like that. And I was very proud of myself until he said to me, well, it does sound a little like Czerny. And then he went to the piano and played a slow C major scale with a seamless legato and a gradual crescendo It was much more beautiful than what I just did. And he looked at me and said, you know, even a scale can be beautiful. I've never forgotten that lesson. Another famous excerpt here is from Chopin's Etude Opus 10, number 2. This is an etude that I myself never felt very comfortable playing. To practice this particular etude, it's the upper part of my hand, this whole part of the wrist that has to be extremely loose and flexible. And I have to give almost no weight to the lower notes played with the first and second fingers. Now, I'd also like to make a little note here on cheating, what some people call cheating. I don't believe there is such a thing as cheating in music. There's using your brain or not using your brain. And when I see a piece of music written like this, part of me goes right away to thinking, well, I can play that with the 10th in my left hand, freeing up my hand to start this etude with the index finger. And then it's very easy to get into it. Similarly, the next chord, I can play this lower note with my left hand, and that frees up my hand as well. And here I take this with the left hand. Here again, some more cheating involved. I never think of any of this as cheating. Nor, I think, would Franz Liszt or Ferruccio Busoni consider this cheating. This is a necessary adaptation one makes for playing the music with your hands. I don't have Liszt's hands. I don't have Chopin's hands. I have Sara Davis Buechner's hands. And the main goal is to make the music sound the way the music needs to sound. And if I have to use my nose or my foot or whatever part of my body to make that happen, I'm going to do that. And I recommend this to my students all the time. I learn from my students all manner of creative fingerings and executions that I never, ever would have thought of simply because their hands are different than mine. So perhaps that's my philosophy of playing the piano, but it aligns with everything that I see in the master school as well as so many of the great pianists who contributed to it. So there we are. So there's a very famous scalar passage in the piano concerto of Edvard Grieg. And it's notated like this. A lot of notes in a very short space of time. I always recommend playing it with two hands, using that principle of a scale being of 4s and 3s. And I'm thinking 4 in the right hand, 3 notes in the left. And in this way, I can play it very rapidly. Etc. But of course, in the practicing, you have to be very secure about where you're placing the hands. That relates a little bit to the choreography of the hands, as explained by Ignaz Friedman in his exercise. Watch as the hands go topsy-turvy one over the other. All those little things coming into play for a passage that takes couple of milliseconds to play. Another passage that comes to mind when I'm thinking about sharing scales between the hands is this one from Camille Saint-Saëns' Piano Concerto No. 2 in G minor. I'm already using my left hand here. And then a long scale, which has to go very rapidly. I've actually had conductors say to me, how many beats would you like me to give you on that scale? Because they've had pianists play it with one hand. But they're very surprised when I say, no, the way it's notated is perfectly fine. That's from the scherzo movement. One very famous passage to use a rapid scale fingering is in the Rhapsodie Espagnole, the Spanish Rhapsody of Franz Liszt. I think most pianists who study this piece know this fingering very, very well. And I believe it was first proposed by Alfred Cortot. I've seen it in his edition, and it's replicated here in the Honas exercises. A very brilliant rapid scale, which consists of 3 parts, all fingered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good way to practice this is to play these scales as clumps together. E major. I remember when I was learning this piece, this was a direct example of where my preparation, my technical exercises had prepared me to handle this passage. I didn't have to learn a new technique to play it. I was really, really very, very happy about that. One of my favorite pieces to play is the second of the Paganini Liszt etudes, and that consists of a whole series of places where you have to share the scales topsy-turvy at high speed. Etc., etc., etc. All of these passages have to be practiced slowly, but also slowly and quickly at the same time in fast clumps. So it involves speed plus choreography. There are countless other examples of scales in the great literature, and you can certainly find many, many of those yourself. But think to yourself about what is being called for in various excerpts. Do you have to share between the hands? Do you need some sort of novel fingering? What about the touch? What about the speed? What about the tone? It's just a huge, huge part of the piano technique. So staying on top of your scales is an essential element of your piano practicing.
Thank you so much for joining us today. There are a few more scales that Sara demonstrated that are only available on Tonebase Premium, as well as the full lesson on how to practice scales from beginning to expert. So if you liked what you saw today, be sure to check out Tonebase Premium by clicking the link in the description below and getting started with a 14-day free trial. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.